So I want to start with a story. And all I want you to do is listen. I want to invite you into the story because I do want to encourage you on your journey forward. So as I said, I grew up in rural South Carolina, and I grew up in the 60s. I see y'all going. I'm waiting for somebody to say, what? We grew up in the 60s. But I did. I grew up in the 60s. And I grew up around all of my family. So we lived in our house. Grandma, granddaddy lived across the street. Aunts and uncles and cousins lived all around me. So I was a happy-go-lucky little girl, loved growing up in the country. Everything we wanted to eat was outside. So I thought we were the wealthiest people in the world. But that's how I grew up. But when I had an opportunity to go to first grade, I had an opportunity to go to first grade in the big city of Columbia. We were about 45 minutes away from Columbia, and I was able to do that because my mom worked at Benedict College in the registrar's office. So I was able to go to Waverly Elementary, which was an all-black elementary school right in the heart of Columbia. And I loved my first grade teacher, Mrs. Grogan. She was beautiful, she was smart, she was amazing, and I was her pet. That's why I loved her so much. And I loved my first grade opportunity. So we went through first grade, and at the end of the year, I prepared to go home for the summer to come back to Waverly Elementary. But during that summer, my parents received a letter in the mail that said I was no longer going to be able to go to Waverly, that they were rezoning, and I was going to be bused into a new school. And so the summer ended, school year rolled around, and our whole routine changed. Now my mom would drop me off at Grandma's before she started her commute to work, and Grandma was responsible for putting me on the bus. Well, about the first 2 days of me going to this new school, my new teacher made it very clear that she was not happy with some of us who had now shown up in her classroom. And I thought to myself, that's okay, I know how to do school. And so Wednesday of that week, she said to the class, on Friday, you can bring items for show and tell. And I thought to myself, that's it, I'm gonna rock show and tell. I'll show her what I'm working with. So Friday came around, and my mom got me ready, and before we left our house, she said, do you have everything you need? And I said, yes, ma'am. And so she dropped me off at Grandma's. Well, I'm walking through Grandma's kitchen, and I have a meltdown. I'm just, and Grandma said, child, what is wrong with you? I said, I don't have anything for show and tell. And I see Grandma looking around the room, and she goes over in the corner, and she picks up something and sticks it in her pocket. And she says, come on, I gotta get you to that bus. So we run down her driveway, the bus pulls up, I step up on the step, Grandma goes in her pocket, and she puts something in my hand. I get to my seat and open it, and it's a marble, a shooter, one of the ones she had just stolen from one of my cousins. But I thought to myself, I don't know what I'm gonna say about it, but it sure is pretty. So I got to my class and sat down and took my marble and put it in the little cubby beside me to wait for show and tell. So finally, at the end of the day, the teacher said, okay, you can take out your items for show and tell. And I got ready to reach for my marble, but there was a little white boy sitting next to me, and he snatched it. And I said to him, that's my marble, you can't have my marble. So I raised my hand to get her attention, and she looked at me and rolled her eyes. And I raised my hand again to get her attention, and she turned away. I raised my hand again and I said, please, please. And she looked at me and she said, what is it? I said, he just took my marble. So she looked at him and she said, "Did you take her marble?" And he looked at me, he looked around the class, and as loud as he could, he said, "I didn't take that N-words marble." And she looked at me and said, "Don't you ever lie to me again." And I sat that day and watched that little boy do show and tell with the marble Grandma gave me. And in that moment, in that space and time, I went from being that happy-go-lucky little girl to someone who was now very afraid in her world, very uncertain, but most of all, a little girl who had just lost her voice. So let me ask you, what did you hear as I told my story? Now, what you felt, what did you hear? What did you hear? Mm-hmm. She said innocence being destroyed. What else did you hear? Mm-hmm. Sadness. What did you feel? Righteous indignation. Okay. Others, what did you feel? Angry. What else? Yeah. Here's our reality. Every person in this room has a marble story. And every person you will ever meet has a marble story. And do you know every human has an intrinsic need to be seen, heard, and valued? If that little boy, he could be walking past me on the street right now, I would not know him. It is her voice and her action that's forever etched in my memory because she refused to see me, hear me, and value me. And every human has that intrinsic need. So as you go on your journey, I want you to make that your mission, to see others, to hear others, to value others. And I want you to adopt 3 things as it relates to how you walk this journey. Number 1, I want you to be vulnerable. I want you to be vulnerable. You know, I have told this story now for decades, and I was given the story as a part of a keynote I was doing, and I was walking down off the stage, and there was a woman standing at the end of the stage waiting for me to come down, and I thought, oh, that's so nice. And my foot hit that bottom step, and she said to me, "I cannot believe you just stood up there and told that story." And I took a deep breath, and I said, "And I'm sorry that you would stand here and dishonor it." When someone steps into the vulnerability to tell their story to you, you don't have to like it, you don't have to love it, it may even trigger something in you, but the greatest gift you can give another person when they trust you with their story is to honor it, right? And that's the same when you tell your story, when you're vulnerable enough to tell your story, give the gift to others when they're vulnerable enough to tell theirs. So be vulnerable. The second thing is be intentional. Be intentional. Every day that you wake up and you step into the role, you step into the classroom, you step into whatever you're stepping into, do it with intentionality. Do it with purpose. Be intentional. So this is not just an exercise in futility as you earn these degrees. Be intentional with what you do. Be clear about the difference you're making. Be clear about the value you're adding. Be intentional to make sure that whatever you do, however you do it, wherever you are, that you are there as an agent of transformation to transform someone's life in some way. That's what we're called to do as social workers. And then lastly, be passionate. Never lose your passion. I get to work with leaders and teams all across the country, and so often they have lost their passion. They're still sitting in seats and occupying spaces in organizations, and they resigned 10 years ago. But they keep coming to work. But they've lost their passion. Your passion is the thing that answers your why. It's the thing that drives you on the hardest day, the most difficult day, perhaps the most difficult client. You remember your why. So be vulnerable, be intentional, and be passionate. That's V.I.P. So walk this walk and walk this journey like a V.I.P. And never forget who you are. Even if you have to stand in the mirror every morning before you leave the house and you do self-talk, never forget who you are. I do mirror talk in the mirror all the time, and it sounds like this: Katrina, you are the daughter of the Most High. You are head and not the tail. You're above and not beneath. You were created for good success. Your steps are ordered, and so you go shine in the world. Don't worry who is not wearing sunglasses. That's their business, but it should not dim your shine. So now you go and do your assignment to impact the lives of others. So I encourage you to do your own mirror talk, whatever that is for you, but do it like a V.I.P. Amen? Amen. Amen.